You've wasted your life taking care of Mom, Sarah sneered, waving the property papers in my face. I'm selling the house. You have until Friday to get out. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm 52 years old, and for the past 30 years, I've dedicated my life to caring for my mother, who suffered from multiple sclerosis, while my sister Sarah built her real estate empire in Chicago. I stayed in our childhood home in Minneapolis, giving up my teaching career to become Mom's full-time caregiver. I looked around the living room where Mom had passed away just 2 weeks ago. Every corner held memories. The worn armchair where I'd read to her, the adjustable hospital bed by the window where she could watch her beloved garden, the family photos covering the walls. Sarah hadn't appeared in any new ones for the past decade. The house isn't yours to sell, I said quietly, straightening the Afghan on Mom's empty chair. Sarah laughed, the same condescending laugh she'd used since we were teenagers. Actually, it is. Mom left no will. As her eldest daughter and a licensed real estate broker, I've already filed the necessary paperwork. The house goes to market next week. I watched my sister strut around the room in her designer suit, calculating square footage and muttering about comparable properties in the neighborhood. She hadn't even attended Mom's funeral, claiming she was too busy with a big closing. Now here she was, less than 14 days later, ready to erase 3 decades of our lives. Where do you expect me to go? I asked, though I already knew her answer. That's not my problem. Maybe if you built a career instead of playing nurse, you'd have options. She paused by the mantel, picking up a photo of Mom and me at her last birthday. Honestly, Margaret, what did you think would happen? Did you expect to inherit everything just because you stayed here? The truth was, I hadn't thought about inheritance at all. My focus had been on making Mom's final years comfortable, managing her medications, taking her to appointments, being there when the bad days outnumbered the good ones. Sarah had never understood that some things mattered more than money. Mom wanted me to have the house, I said. She told me so many times. Sarah rolled her eyes. Verbal promises don't count. Without a will, state law gives me primary claim as the eldest. I've already spoken to my lawyer. It's ironclad. I sat down in Mom's chair, feeling the familiar fabric beneath my fingers. When did you become this person, Sarah? When did money become more important than family? Oh, spare me the guilt trip. I built something with my life while you chose to stay stuck here. Don't blame me for your bad decisions. But as Sarah turned away, I caught a glimpse of something in her expression. Not guilt, exactly. More like uncertainty, quickly masked by her usual arrogance. The lawyer's coming Friday to handle the paperwork, she said, heading for the door. Have your things packed by then. After she left, I sat in the growing darkness, remembering conversations with Mom over the years. She'd always been so insistent about certain things, keeping her old desk locked, maintaining her relationship with Mr. Harrison, her attorney of 40 years, even when Sarah pressured her to switch to someone younger. Some people show their true colors when money's involved, Mom had told me last year, during one of her clearer moments. That's why it's important to be careful, to plan ahead. I went to her desk and ran my fingers along the worn wood. For 30 years, this had been command central for managing her care. Medical records, insurance documents, correspondence with doctors. I'd never opened the locked bottom drawer, respecting her privacy even as her illness progressed. Now I took the key from its hiding place behind the family Bible and opened that drawer for the first time. Inside, I found a single envelope addressed to Mr. Harrison, dated just 6 months ago. My hands shook as I read the letter inside. Then I picked up my phone and made a call I should have made 2 weeks ago. Mr. Harrison? This is Margaret Sullivan. I need to talk to you about Mom's will. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. the next morning. I spent the night sorting through 3 decades of memories, trying to decide what I could bear to part with if Sarah succeeded in selling the house. Each item held a story. The collection of pressed flowers Mom had started in her better days, the handmade quilts from her church group, the recipes she dictated to me when her hands became too shaky to write. At exactly 9 a.m., Mr. Harrison's secretary showed me into his office. He looked exactly as I remembered. Tall, distinguished, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Sarah was already there, practically bouncing with impatience. "Let's make this quick," she said. "I have a showing at 11. Mr. Harrison ignored her, focusing on me. "Margaret, I was so sorry to hear about your mother. She was a remarkable woman." "Thank you," I said. "She spoke of you often." He nodded, then opened a thick file on his desk. "I understand there's some confusion about your mother's estate." Sarah leaned forward. "There's no confusion. Mom died without a will. I've already filed." "Actually," Mr. Harrison interrupted, "your mother executed her final will and testament 6 months ago, in this very office." The color drained from Sarah's face. "That's impossible. I've been handling her legal affairs for years." "No," Mr. Harrison said firmly. "You attempted to handle her affairs. Elizabeth was quite clear about maintaining her own counsel." He removed a document from the file and began to read. "I, Elizabeth Marie Sullivan, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament." The next 10 minutes changed everything. Mom hadn't just left me the house. She'd left me everything, with one significant condition. The property couldn't be sold for at least 5 years after her death, and it had to be used to continue her life's work, providing care for those who needed it most. Mom wanted the house converted into a care facility, Mr. Harrison explained, specifically for MS patients who can't afford private care. Margaret's experience as a caregiver makes her uniquely qualified to manage this transition. Sarah's face had gone from white to red. "This is ridiculous. I'll contest it." "You can try," Mr. Harrison said mildly. "But your mother anticipated that. There's video documentation of her signing this will, along with extensive notes about her reasons for these decisions, including, I might add, detailed records of your attempts to pressure her into selling the house while she was still alive." I remembered all those phone calls from Sarah, the veiled suggestions that Mom would be better off in a facility, the constant pressure about unlocking the property's value. Mom had been documenting everything. Additionally, Mr. Harrison continued, "The will stipulates that any attempt to contest these provisions results in the entire estate being donated to the National MS Society." Sarah stood up so abruptly her chair fell backward. "This isn't over," she snapped, storming out of the office. But it was over. Mom had known exactly what she was doing. She'd watched us both over the years. Sarah's growing materialism, my dedication to her care, and she planned accordingly. Mr. Harrison handed me a separate envelope. "Your mother asked me to give you this after the will was read." Inside was a letter in Mom's shaky handwriting. "My dearest Margaret, you didn't waste your life taking care of me. You showed me what real love looks like. While others saw burden, you saw purpose. While they counted costs, you gave without counting. The house isn't your inheritance. It's your launching pad. Take everything you've learned and help others the way you helped me." I know Sarah will be angry. Maybe someday she'll understand that some things matter more than money. Until then, know that I saw everything, understood everything, and made my choices with clear eyes and a full heart. All my love. Mom. The transformation began slowly. In the first month after the will reading, I partnered with Dr. Michael Freeman, Mom's longtime neurologist, to develop a plan for converting our family home into what would become Sullivan House, a residential care facility for MS patients with limited resources. The irony wasn't lost on me when the first contractor we met turned out to be one of Sarah's former clients. "Your sister's been calling around," he admitted, shuffling uncomfortably in our living room, "trying to discourage local businesses from working with you." I wasn't surprised. Sarah had spent the past 4 weeks trying to undermine the project through every legal and professional channel available. She'd filed complaints with the zoning board, contacted the neighborhood association, and even tried to have the property's historical status revised to prevent modifications. "I understand if you need to decline," I told the contractor, but he shook his head. "My mother had MS," he said quietly. "She spent her last years in a state facility because we couldn't afford better care. What you're doing here, it matters." We spent the next 3 hours planning the necessary modifications: wheelchair ramps, accessible bathrooms, a modernized kitchen that could handle special dietary needs. The estimated cost was substantial, but Mom had thought of that too. Beyond the house itself, she'd left a significant investment portfolio earmarked specifically for the conversion. "Your mother was quite strategic," Mr. Harrison explained during our weekly project meeting. "She'd been investing in medical technology companies for years, building a fund for exactly this purpose." The first real challenge came when Sarah somehow convinced the city council to review our permit applications. I arrived at the hearing to find her sitting in the front row, surrounded by expensive-looking lawyers. "The proposed facility will decrease property values," one attorney argued. "The neighborhood isn't zoned for commercial medical use." I stood alone at the podium, feeling every eye in the room. "Sullivan House isn't a commercial enterprise," I explained. "It's a residential care facility, operating under existing household zoning with approved medical accommodations, the same arrangements we had while caring for my mother." Then I introduced our first potential resident, Maria Torres, a 45-year-old former teacher whose MS had progressed rapidly, leaving her unable to work and at risk of losing her home. "Without Sullivan House, Maria faces institutionalization," I told the council. "She'll be separated from her teenage daughter, forced into a system that sees her as a case number rather than a person. We can offer an alternative: skilled care in a home setting, allowing families to stay connected during the hardest times." Maria spoke next, her voice soft but determined. "When I was diagnosed, I thought I'd lost everything. Sullivan House gives me hope that I can maintain my dignity, stay close to my daughter, and maybe even help others facing the same challenges." The council voted unanimously to approve our permits. Outside the hearing room, Sarah caught up with me. "You always were good at playing the sympathy card," she sneered. "It's not a card, Sarah. It's called compassion, something Mom tried to teach both of us." "Oh, please. Mom manipulated everyone with her illness, and now you're doing the same thing." I turned to face my sister fully. "Is that really what you think? That Mom's suffering was manipulation? That my care for her was some long con to get the house? You could have put her in a facility years ago, let professionals handle it. Instead, you martyred yourself, and now you're turning our family home into a charity case." "No, Sarah. I'm turning it into exactly what Mom wanted: a place where people facing MS don't have to choose between care and dignity, where families don't have to mortgage their futures to provide basic support for their loved ones. "You're a fool," she said. "That house is worth over $1 million in today's market. We could have split it, both lived comfortably." We already live comfortably. You with your real estate empire, me with a purpose that means something. The difference is, I can sleep at night. The renovation work began in earnest after the council approval. We modified the first floor to accommodate 4 resident rooms, each with specialized equipment and private accessible bathrooms. The old living room became a communal space, and Mom's beloved garden was expanded to include raised beds that residents could tend from their wheelchairs. Dr. Freeman helped us assemble a care team: nurses, physical therapists, and support staff who understood our vision. Many had worked with Mom over the years and believed in what we were creating. "This is exactly what the MS community needs," Dr. Freeman said during a walkthrough. "A bridge between home care and institutionalization. Somewhere families can know their loved ones are getting skilled care without losing their connection to home." But Sarah wasn't finished fighting. One morning, I arrived to find a news crew outside the house. The reporter thrust a microphone in my face. "How do you respond to allegations that your mother was mentally incompetent when she changed her will?" Sarah had gone to the media, claiming Mom's MS had affected her judgment in her final months. She provided evidence out of context medical records, statements from her own doctors who'd never actually treated Mom, even childhood photos trying to prove she'd been the devoted daughter. The story ran on the evening news, painting Sullivan House as a daughter's manipulation of her ailing mother's estate. Our funding partners started getting nervous. Potential residents' families called with concerns. That's when Mom's friends from church showed up, dozens of them, carrying casseroles and determination. They organized a counter-campaign, sharing stories of Mom's clarity and purpose, her detailed discussions about wanting the house to help others with MS. Mrs. Peterson, who'd led Mom's prayer group for 20 years, went straight to the news station. "I visited Elizabeth Sullivan every week for decades," she told them. "That woman had a sharper mind in her last months than most of us have in our prime. She knew exactly what she was doing with her property." The station ran a follow-up story, Sullivan House, a mother's legacy of love. They interviewed Dr. Freeman about Mom's mental competency, showed the detailed plans she'd made with Mr. Harrison, and highlighted the growing need for affordable MS care options. Sarah's media campaign backfired spectacularly. Support for Sullivan House grew. Local businesses offered discounted materials for the renovation. Medical supply companies donated equipment. A contractor specializing in accessible home modifications offered to do some of the work pro bono. "Your sister stopped by my office," Mr. Harrison told me during this period. "She tried to suggest that if I helped her overturn the will, there'd be a generous payment involved." "What did you tell her?" "I reminded her that attempting to bribe an attorney is a serious offense. Then I showed her to the door. The day we welcomed our first resident, Maria Torres, and her daughter Sophia, I found a note slipped under the front door. Sarah's handwriting. 'You think you've won, but this isn't over. Nobody wants to live next door to a bunch of invalids. This place will fail, and when it does, I'll be waiting.'" I tucked the note away in Mom's old desk next to her final letter to me. Let Sarah wait. Sullivan House wasn't about winning or losing. It was about continuing the work Mom had started, about showing that everyone deserves care and dignity, regardless of their circumstances. As I watched Sophia help her mother settle into her new room, decorating the walls with family photos and arranging familiar belongings, I knew Mom was right. This wasn't an inheritance in the traditional sense. It was a mission, a purpose, a way to multiply the love and care she taught me to give. Sarah might never understand that some things are worth more than money. But as Sullivan House filled with life, laughter, and hope, I realized that was her loss, not mine. 6 months after opening Sullivan House, we were operating at full capacity, with a waiting list that broke my heart. Each room held a story of courage, each resident teaching me something new about resilience. But it was watching the families that truly showed me the impact of what Mom had envisioned. Like when Sofia Torres made honor roll and rushed to show her mother Maria first, both of them crying happy tears in the garden Mom had loved so much. Or when Bill Anderson, our youngest resident at 39, was able to attend his daughter's wedding through a specialized transport service we partnered with. I hadn't heard from Sarah in months, not since her last threatening note. But on a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year after Mom's passing, I looked up from paperwork to find her standing in my office doorway. She'd lost weight, and her designer suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in her face. "Your security's lacking," she said, trying for her usual sneer, but not quite managing it. I walked right in. "We don't need security, Sarah. This is a home, not a fortress." She glanced around the office, once Mom's bedroom, taking in the medical schedules on the walls, the care coordination charts, the photos of our residents and their families. "I need to talk to you," she said finally, privately. I led her to the garden, now modified with raised beds and smooth wheelchair paths. Mrs. Chen, our oldest resident, was teaching Sophia about growing herbs for cooking. They waved as we passed. "Quite the little community you've built," Sarah said, and for once, I couldn't detect sarcasm in her voice. We sat at the garden table where Mom used to have her morning coffee. "What's wrong, Sarah? You look terrible." She laughed, a hollow sound. "Always the caregiver, aren't you? Even for people who don't deserve it. Just tell me why you're here." Sarah stared at her manicured hands for a long moment. "I've been diagnosed with MS." The words hung in the autumn air like smoke. The world tilted slightly as understanding dropped like a stone in my stomach. "Early symptoms started about 8 months ago," she continued. "Numbness in my hands, vision problems. I ignored it, told myself it was stress. Then last week, I fell during a property showing. I couldn't get up. The client had to call an ambulance." "Oh, Sarah, don't." She held up a hand. "I don't want pity. I came because—" She took a deep breath. "Because Mom knew." What? She knew I was showing symptoms. That's why she made those specific provisions in her will. Why she insisted on the house becoming this. She gestured at Sullivan House. She saw it coming before I would admit it to myself. The pieces clicked into place. Sarah's desperate attempts to sell the house, her increasing hostility, her frantic legal challenges. She'd been running from a truth she couldn't face. "Mom tried to talk to me about it last year," Sarah continued. "I shut her down, accused her of being dramatic. But she recognized the early signs because she lived them. She tried to make sure I'd have somewhere to go when I couldn't deny it anymore." I reached for my sister's hand, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull away. "I've lost 4 listings this month," she said quietly. "Can't trust my hands with the paperwork. My partner's talking about buying me out before my health issues affect the firm's reputation. What do you need?" She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since Mom got sick. "I need my sister back. I need." I need to understand how you did this for so long without breaking. Over the next hour, Sarah poured out everything: her fear when the symptoms started, her anger at the diagnosis, her growing understanding of what Mom had gone through. She'd been researching care facilities, discovering exactly what I'd known for years. The system was broken, good care was astronomically expensive, and most places treated patients like problems to be managed rather than people to be supported. I can't afford the private facilities, she admitted. Not long term. The kind of care Mom had, what you gave her, I'm looking at selling everything I own and still coming up short. You don't have to sell anything, I said. That's the whole point of Sullivan House. I can't ask that of you, not after everything I've done. You're not asking. Mom already arranged it. She knew you'd need this place someday. Sarah broke down then, really broke down, in a way I hadn't seen since we were children. I held her while she cried. There in Mom's garden, understanding finally flowing between us. The next few weeks brought changes I never expected. Sarah listed her Chicago properties and moved back to Minneapolis. She didn't become a resident immediately. Her symptoms were still manageable with medication. But she started volunteering at Sullivan House, using her business expertise to help us expand our funding base and navigate healthcare bureaucracy. I spent years seeing this place as a waste of resources, she told me one evening as we reviewed grant applications. Now I understand it's the most valuable thing Mom could have left us. Her expertise proved invaluable as we worked to expand Sullivan House's reach. She negotiated partnerships with medical equipment providers, structured fundraising campaigns, and used her real estate connections to identify properties suitable for additional locations. The most surprising change came in how she related to our residents. Sarah, who had once dismissed them as invalids, spent hours listening to their stories, learning about their lives before MS, helping their families navigate the complex healthcare system she was now learning from the other side. I was so wrong, she admitted one night after a particularly challenging day when her symptoms had flared. About Mom, about you, about all of this. I saw everything in terms of monetary value because that was easier than facing what might be coming. Mom understood that. I told her. That's why she created this legacy for both of us. Sarah looked around the living room where we'd grown up, now a warm community space where residents and families gathered. She was always the smartest one in the family. She never gave up on either of us, I said, even when we gave up on each other. That evening, as I watched Sarah helping Mrs. Chin with her evening medications, something that would have been unthinkable a year ago, I found myself reading Mom's last letter to me. The part about hoping Sarah would someday understand that some things matter more than money. Mom had known all along that Sullivan House wasn't just about providing care for strangers. It was about healing our family, about teaching Sarah the lessons she'd need when her own challenges arose, about transforming pain into purpose. As if reading my thoughts, Sarah looked up and caught my eye. For the first time in decades, I saw my sister again, not the hard-driving real estate broker, but the girl who used to hold my hand when we were scared, who once promised we'd always take care of each other. Some inheritances, it turns out, are worth far more than property deeds and bank accounts. Sometimes the greatest legacy is the ability to transform loss into love, fear into understanding, and family wounds into wisdom that helps heal others. 5 years after Sullivan House opened its doors, I stood beside Sarah at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for our third location. Her MS had progressed, requiring her to use a wheelchair, but her mind was as sharp as ever. Together, we transformed Mom's vision into a network of care facilities that had changed hundreds of lives. Ready? I asked, holding the oversized scissors. Together, she said, her hand joining mine. The crowd applauded as we cut the ribbon to Sullivan House East. The new facility, a converted boutique hotel Sarah had helped us acquire through her real estate connections, would provide care for 20 additional MS patients and their families. Mom would be proud, Sarah whispered, and I squeezed her shoulder. The journey hadn't been easy. Sarah's diagnosis had forced both of us to grow in ways we never expected. As her symptoms worsened, she'd moved into the original Sullivan house, taking the room next to Maria Torres, the same room where Mom had spent her final years. Full circle, she'd said on moving day. Funny how life does that. Sarah had transformed her business acumen into a force for good, creating a foundation that helped other families facing MS. She used her network to raise funds, awareness, and support for our expanding mission. Her former real estate partners, who had once tried to push her out, now served on our board of directors. The biggest surprise came last year when Sarah received the Community Service Award from the National MS Society. Standing at the podium, barely able to hold the microphone but determined to speak, she told our story. I once thought my sister had wasted her life caring for our mother, she'd said. Now I understand she was learning the most valuable skills anyone could possess: how to face illness with dignity, how to help others maintain their humanity in the face of devastating challenges, how to turn a family's pain into purpose. Today, watching her greet residents' families at the new facility, I saw Mom in her smile, in her gentle way of listening to their fears and hopes. The sister who once cared only about property values now spent her days ensuring others could access the care they deserved. Remember when I said this place would fail? Sarah asked later as we sat in the garden of the original Sullivan house. I've never been happier to be wrong. I looked around at what we'd built together. The garden had expanded to include a therapy area where residents could work with trained professionals. The community room hosted weekly support groups. Families came and went freely, finding here what we discovered: that healing happens best in places that feel like home. We're discussing a fourth location, Sarah said, reviewing plans on her tablet. That property in Rochester you mentioned. The numbers work and the need is there. You should rest, I told her, noting the fatigue in her voice. She shook her head. Plenty of time for rest later. Right now, there are families who need what we can offer. That evening, as residents gathered for dinner, now a daily community event, I watched Sarah leading a discussion about expanding our transportation services. Her hands shook as she took notes, but her voice was strong, determined. Mom's letter sat framed on my office wall now, a daily reminder of why we did this work. But it was no longer just Mom's legacy we were building. It had become something larger, a testament to the power of forgiveness, the strength of sisterhood, and the truth that our greatest challenges can become our greatest gifts to others. Some things matter more than money, Sarah often told potential donors. We learned that lesson the hard way, but now we have the privilege of helping others learn it with more grace. As I watched the sun set over our expanding community, I thought about how far we come from that day in Mr. Harrison's office. Sarah and I had found our way back to being sisters, but more than that, we'd found our shared purpose. Mom had known all along that the house wasn't just a piece of property to be fought over. It was a seed she planted, watered with her wisdom and faith in both her daughters, that grew into something far more valuable than any real estate portfolio. Together, Sarah and I had transformed her legacy into a living testament to the power of love, understanding, and the simple truth that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what we receive, but what we give to others. The Sullivan House network continues to grow, but its heart remains in that first home where a mother's love and foresight helped two sisters find their way back to each other, and in doing so, helped countless others find their way forward.